Hello, everyone, and welcome to News Decoder's first Decoder Dialogue of the academic year. My name is Maria Krasinski, and I'm the Managing Director at News Decoder, and I'll be your moderator today. For those joining us for the first time, News Decoder is an educational nonprofit that is headquartered in Paris, France, and our mission is to empower young people to be active global citizens and civically engaged through journalism. Through school partnerships with schools all around the world, News Decoder uses the tools and techniques of journalism as a means for young people to go beyond their borders and investigate global issues like a real-world journalist would. In our monthly Decoder Dialogue series, we convene youth and professionals around a virtual roundtable to discuss and decode the big topics on their minds. And our team members, correspondents, and school partners are based all around the world, and some of them are joining us today. So let's meet our panelists. Ben, we're going to come to you first.
Hi everyone, my name is Ben. I live in the United States and I am in 12th grade right now in my senior year.
Hello, my name is Maria Alejandra Pinedo. I'm from Colombia and I'm also in my senior year and I'm really excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Ama. I'm a senior at the Thatcher School and I'm from Nigeria.
Mahi.
Hello everyone, I am Mahi Mastri. I am in India and I'm actually really pursuing my 10th right now, but then I'm looking forward for innovation and a lot of new things coming up.
Hi, I'm Teddy. I live in the United States and I'm in 12th grade and I go to school with Ben at the Tatnall School.
And Enoch, we'll come to you next.
Oh, hi, I'm Enock Wanderema, a writer from Uganda. Happy to be here.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Nadine. I'm based in Germany and I'm a freelance consultant, trainer, and coach. Happy to be here with you today.
And hi, I'm Jeremy in Kigali, Rwanda, originally from the UK, and I'm a former foreign correspondent and now global leadership consultant.
And last but not least, I'm Carlo Looney. I'm the Program and Communications Manager with News Decoder.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here today. We have an exciting discussion up ahead, but before we get into that, just a few logistic notes for our audience. This webinar is being recorded and it will be shared to News Decoder's website in the coming days. If there's anyone who can't be here live, it will be available for them to view. We're going to open with some questions and discussion among our panelists and then open the floor to Q&A. But we really truly aim to make this a dialogue. So please do submit your questions or comments to that Q&A tab below. You can also upvote which questions to ask our panelists. So housekeeping out of the way, let's get on to our event. So is it time for young people to take charge is the question we are debating today. And Kahal, I think we have a poll we want to throw up for the audience to think about. Should age be a consideration when choosing a leader? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So we'll give a few seconds here, maybe 10 seconds for everybody to chime in from the audience. Should age be a consideration when choosing a leader? Okay, we'll take 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's close the poll. Let's see what are the results. Okay, so we're a little divided here. So almost 2/3, 60% yes, almost 40% no. So we will keep that in mind as we move through today's discussion. Okay, we can close that poll. So the impetus for this talk came from a few places, one of which being this year, there's been a lot of talk around elections. More than 60 countries around the world and the European Union have held or will hold elections, which is representing almost half of the world's population. But while the discussion has focused so much on which leaders voters will choose, we wanted to take a step back and talk about leadership itself. What does it take to be a leader? What does it mean to be a good or a bad leader? And how can young people best prepare to take that lead? And our student panelists here are already actively involved as young leaders. So let's hear what they've got to say. And we're going to start with Ben, who is in the United States, as we've heard. And now, Ben, you are involved with something a lot of our audience might already be familiar with, which is student government. And often that's a great way at a local level for young people to get involved in leadership. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your role in student government and even what you found as a big success or the biggest challenge in the roles that you have.
Yes, so at the Tatnall School, me and Teddy and I are both class officers. So we are a part of student government for our grade. There's class officers for each grade, 9th to 12th, and we all participate in making certain decisions for the school, and we work with the head of the upper school to plan events and make decisions for our class and try to represent our class best, because we know what the students want, I think a little bit more than the teachers. It's been a really great experience. It's my first year being a class officer, but I know Teddy has been a junior class officer, and he's been a part of student government for 3 or 4 years. And it's interesting to be able to help make decisions and be able to be a voice for the people in our class who don't necessarily get to make decisions or have a say in what goes on at the school. For example, the juniors last year, we have prom, which was a dance in the spring, and they helped do most of the planning for that, which was pretty cool to see. They have a big say in that, in planning what where the event took place, like how it ran. And then this year, as senior class officers, we do planning for our homecoming dance, and the week leading up to that, we have like a spirit week where people can dress up and the class officers actually get to decide what events go on and how everything is run, which is really cool. We have meetings about once every 2 weeks or so, and we get to relay the feedback from our class to the teachers, which is really nice. And they're very receptive in listening to what we have to say, and they really value our opinions, which is very, very nice. And it makes everybody feel more included, and there's not this separation between teachers and students. There's really a connection between the leaders at our school and the students, which I think is a very good thing, and it helps foster a vibrant community where we all can talk and discourse about issues and stuff that goes on at our school, which I think is really nice.
Great, thanks for sharing. I think you touched upon some of the topics we'll certainly get into here about being a voice, representing your community, and even that collaboration and partnership with the teachers. But Maria, I want to come to you next because something Ben was talking about there about having the respect from teachers who are in a position of authority. You've raised the challenge of being heard as a young person on important matters. And a lot of our attendees actually wrote in ahead of time with questions relating to the challenges young people face when stepping into a leadership role, whether that's being looked down on as too young or too inexperienced, or, they just don't have the power to be seen as an equal. But you have found a way, both within your school and even on a larger stage, representing Colombia, to make your voice heard. And so I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it's been like a really rough path because it's not easy for us young people to be heard because sometimes like the adults think that our opinions are not as valuable as them, like as theirs. So yeah, it has been really difficult, but like besides that, I have found a way because my school has supported me in many different ways. And thanks to it, I went to COP28 in Dubai. So it was a really huge experience. Like it was amazing because I had the opportunity to talk to people and to like talk them into what I was thinking and convince them on that like I was right. So it was really good because we did a manifesto which like include like people of every country, almost every country, and we show it to the people that were at top. So it was like a way to saying like, hey, we're here, hear us. So it is a really it was really worth it, and I had to I don't want to say fight for it, but I did kind of, because there are like limited spaces that young people can talk, so it's really difficult. But even that, I had the opportunity with other two guys, which are huge friends of mine. So yeah, I had the opportunity to be someone and to be heard, and it was really amazing. But answering to your question, yeah, it's really difficult to be heard as a young leader, because as I said before, it's not easy to make an opinion when the people that you are presenting the opinion are not paying attention or are not interested in that. So it was rough, but I think with other strategies you can make that people, and most of all young people, be more involved in these type of situations. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. And for those who don't know, COP28 is the Conference of the Parties, the big UN conference on climate that is held every year. Last year was in Dubai, and the next one coming up in Baku in the fall. So I'm going to come over to Aman now, who also has found kind of strategies for being heard and for young voices to be heard. And particularly, you are also working to help elevate the voices of others, girls in particular. And you founded an NGO called Girls Across Borders. And in an article that you published on News Decoder, you wrote, "I started Girls Across Borders with the hope of connecting girls from around the world and creating a sense of global community for young women." So I'd love to hear more about this initiative and share that, but also, within the context of our discussion on leadership, what were the leadership skills that you found most important to prepare you to create that NGO?
Okay, thank you. So for more context, I started Girls Across Borders 2 years ago, as you mentioned, to kind of connect girls from all over the world, because in today's day in society, girls' voices and young people's voices aren't really taken seriously or heard. And what we did is that we had meetings via Zoom every month, and we had a topic to discuss. And that way kind of connected girls. And if we didn't have a topic, we're just talking about our day-to-day lives. Like, for instance, next month, we're having a meeting with Jordanian girls from the SOS Children's Villages, talking about what it's like to be a girl in Jordan and what that is like. And we also have, if we don't have our monthly discussions, we have meetings with other female leaders, kind of like global leaders, showing other girls that to not let their current circumstances define their future potential, because so many girls, especially in the global South, don't have enough opportunities to become great female leaders. And to answer your question about what leadership skills I think it took, I think just me stepping out of my comfort zone and asking questions and reaching out for help. And I think that was really helpful in starting Girls Across Borders. And I think it has grown to become a platform to continue to engage, empower, and educate girls. And we just kind of continued showing up, and how we kind of grew is we just tell a friend to tell a friend and continue bringing more people. And that's how we continue to grow. Yes.
There's some great bits of advice there for anybody, I think. Stepping out of your comfort zone, asking for help is often the most difficult thing to do, but it's actually, I think, quite a great sign of leadership. Thank you for sharing. And we can share out the articles that Amma has written too. We can put that in the chat maybe, and if anyone's curious to read. Great. So let's move over to Mahi now. So Mahi, I know you are also involved in some leadership initiatives at your school. You're part of a climate education initiative. And, hearing what the other panelists have said, I'm curious from your experience, what have you found is, the best way to take action and start to build leadership skills?
First of all, a very warm welcome and very warm namaste from India to everyone present here. So basically in India, what I see, or in this society where I live, people at young age are given a very less chance to become leaders, within themselves. And the elders, they try to take the charge for everything. And they think that the thinking capacity of the young people are still less, or they want a real good experience. to grow up or to learn things better. But what I feel is basically I'm a sport person too. I play basketball, and where I see my captainship, I try to play in a cool mind. A game reaches a different point on a court, but I look forward for making cool decisions, listening to people, and having that integrity and empathy towards the people and my teammates. And what I feel is communication here plays a very important and a vital role because making bonds professionally and personally gives a customized touch to every teammate, and that would increase the involvement of teammates in the work, and if any work is done with involvement and with mindfulness, that will increase the quality of work done, and that will also make the work a really thing. And I look forward for not being a good leader but an effective leader. So I feel these 2 points a little different, a thin line between them. And I found that like three parameters which I could differentiate between these three. And I try to inculcate the effective leadership qualities within myself, like having that empathy, motivating my teammates to the goal, and not being that visionary that, yes, I just want the development. But progress for me is not just stepping upstairs, but progress for me is persistently doing everything every day with some ups, some lows, some best, some worst, and going forward with that, having that mindset within yourself that yes, you can do it, and not leaving your hope basically. So I try to inculcate this quality within the people around me, and that's the reason why people are not influenced but inspired by me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahi. I was taking some notes there. I think this distinction between a good leader and an effective leader, I definitely want to come back to that and hear everyone's thoughts. But I want to give Teddy a chance to chime in here, and then we'll move to kind of broader discussion. So Teddy, when we were talking before, you just had sort of this curiosity of hearing about different, leadership opportunities in different countries, which is part of the goal here. And you mentioned something in your school that I don't know if that's as common in other places, which is a peer leadership system. And can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like at Tottenham?
Yeah, definitely. So it was definitely interesting to hear what goes on, the kinds of opportunities everyone else has. But yeah, I'm super lucky at the Tatnall School. We have tons of leadership opportunities for everyone in the school, from the youngest kids to the oldest kids. But yeah, so our peer leadership program is very interesting, and I hadn't heard of anything like this before. I remember my older sister was in the first class that did it. She's 4 years older than me. So it's pretty new, but basically there's a group of seniors selected, and they run monthly meetings with the incoming freshmen, so the youngest kids in our upper school, and they kind of develop a connection between these younger groups and try to help the transition become easier for them. And I think it's good because obviously when you're coming into a new environment, it can be pretty daunting at times. And to have not teachers, but other students kind of be on your side and have a friend, a helpful hand that you can reach out to at all times and make the younger kids more comfortable is really important. And it's actually really cool. So at the beginning of the year, the peer leaders that were selected from the senior class do training and some stuff to get themselves acquainted with each other, to make sure the connection is strong between all of each other, and talk about what they're going to do. And there's a lot of planning that goes into it. They go on a retreat together overnight. And yeah, I think it's a really cool program, and it's definitely nice to have. And then beyond that, we have among other opportunities are student council government that Ben talked about. And then we also have a lot of club leadership at our school. We have tons of clubs, and all upper schoolers are open to run their own club. And so there can be a couple club leaders, and then you have a teacher to represent the club too. And then also we have school presentations to the whole upper school on Thursdays, and anyone is open to give a presentation on anything they're passionate about. And I feel like that's a good way to make your voice heard. And then we also have student ambassadors. So a little, it's a lot of people in the upper school can be student ambassadors, and I think it's a good opportunity for kids to learn about how to be a bit of a leader just on a smaller scale, so you're not being shoved into like giving a presentation in front of everyone if you don't want. But student ambassadors have the opportunity to have like shadow students who want to come to the school, and you can kind of guide them around for the day, so it's less of a scary thing than like going up in front of the whole school. But I think it's a good learning opportunity for anyone that feels like they want to be a part of that and learn how to be a good leader.
Yeah. Most definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Those are some really concrete actions and opportunities available within your school environment. So you're already building those leadership skills before you even graduate. And some connections maybe, you know, with the peer learning, with Ahmed's program, with Mahi mentioned about sports and the communication and collaboration that goes on there. So there are all these opportunities that might not even be branded as leadership, but are baked in to the school experience. Well, I want to come over to some of our invited guests, and Enock, I'm going to come to you first. So as we mentioned, Enock is a correspondent, a recent correspondent and journalist who joined the News Decoder roster. And your most recent piece for News Decoder was titled Youth Power Rises in East Africa. And I'd love to hear a little more, you know, given News Decoder's mission of how journalism is a bridge to, you know, learning about the world and building active citizenship skills, you know, your experience of reporting on young people and young leaders and sort of the changes that you see taking place among youth in the areas you're reporting from.
All right. So thank you, Maria. I'm sorry, I won't turn on my video because my lights are playing up and they're trying to make them work. So yeah, so one time I was listening to an interview by President Kagame of Rwanda, and he was asked why does he have more women in power? And he said, my population has more women, so why not have more women in power to represent that bigger number of women in the country? So to him, a bigger population of women means a bigger population or maybe a bigger number of women in power. And so I'll bring that back to the recent population census release of Uganda, where about 72% of them are below 35. Actually, you might say the UN projects is 80, but the country just released is 72. And then only 5% are above 60. Only 5% above 60. And yet you find that it's the 5% that are running the country. They're the ministers, they're the MPs, they're the presidents. And so if you look at Kagame's analysis of more women in power equals the bigger population in the country, and then we have 72% youth, but it's the 5% ruling, then it doesn't tally because it's the 5% who do not understand what youths need in this era, but then they are the ones running government. They are the ones making policies that do not really work or resonate with the youths. They are the ones dictating what has to be done or everything. I remember during COVID-19, I think it was before or maybe after, that was elections 2021. Our youths went to social media in Uganda, and I think they were trying to oppose the ruling governments. So we had election in 2021, and the president decided to ban Facebook. To him, that's social media. It doesn't matter to him. He's old, but to the youth, it was a big deal. So when you shut down something that works for the youth, then it means you're ruling in your archaic system without considering their needs. And so that's the divide that we have here.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And I think what you just said there, that the divide between the disparity in the representation in population, and then how that plays out in policy, such as in this case, social media, shows a sort of disconnect, which I think is relatable for all these contexts. And kind of on that topic, sort of the generational divide, perhaps I'm going to come over to Nadine. We've been talking about these barriers that young people face stepping into leadership around that age and, perhaps inexperience. And you work with young leaders and more senior leaders. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit about your experience with these groups and interaction or clashing, perhaps.
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, so definitely it's a huge topic. In part, a lot of my recent work is from organizations saying we do not know how to reconcile sort of, our younger staff coming in, starting their careers in different organizations, and our more senior staff. And I think it's they often require some help in facilitating the dialogue, actually, so that both sides can benefit. But more broadly speaking, when I was thinking about this question and comparing sort of the experience of more senior leaders, where I do a lot of senior leadership development, and then working with young leaders, be it in schools or universities, for example, I can see a lot of shift. And let me caveat by saying I've seen tremendously good and highly aware more senior leaders, but for a lot of them, that's been a lot of work to become aware of certain topics and be more mindful in language and behavior, for example. Whereas for the younger generation, I'm often positively surprised, and that says something about my generation, but positively surprised about the level of awareness around things like diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging, questions of social justice, questions of being more inclusive and taking responsibility in your own behavior, but also sort of, sustainability. We talked about climate, digitalization, and how to use it to our benefit, but also be aware of the risks or challenges. A lot of my work is in mental health awareness and well-being in the workplace. And at least in Germany, it's a huge class where sort of the older generation or more senior leaders come from a generation where it was, hard work and you have to be tough and you don't complain and you work long hours, and who works the longest is the best, and who comes sick to work is the best. And I see a young generation, young leaders that say, why would we do that? And really questioning that and challenging that and saying we can do great things and we can have a lot of impact and maintain our well-being and make sure people, feel seen, heard, appreciated, but also stay healthy and don't burn out. So I see a generation of leaders who embody positive leadership, where if I do senior leadership development, I often come in and I have to explain and make a case and say, why would you shift to a more positive leadership approach and what's the benefit of that? And then I see a young generation of leaders who come in and that's default almost, and people are very mindful in their language. Just yesterday, I was facilitating a session. The introduction activity was find 3 commonalities and 3 differences in a group of 3. And I had a group of younger leaders, and immediately they said, oh, in our group, we're all white, we're seen as female, and we have a high academic background, like we're highly educated, and reflecting on the privilege that gives them. And to me, that's always standing out because I'm not used to that from working with more senior leaders, where often I have to do a lot of work to say, hey, let's also become aware of our positionality, the privilege we hold, the power we have, how to share that, how to be mindful. And so I would love to make a case, and I try to do that with organizations, for reverse mentoring. And I think it goes back to what Ben already said for his school, to say, how do we create, mentoring or kind of programs where we learn from each other, and where I think the young generation has so much to share about how to use digital tools to create more impact, to create community. Amma, you were saying that, you use that to bring girls together across borders. So how to do that, how to pay attention to things like sustainability, climate, challenge gender norms. We've heard some examples of that already. How to be more mindful, more empathetic, all of these things, and yet also have a chance to learn from more senior leaders and the experience that they've had. I think that's also valuable. And I often see that there's a lot of interest and willingness on both sides, but people might not necessarily see where and how to do that. So I think doing more of that, and interestingly links nicely to Jeremy, from whom we will hear in a moment, because I feel that describes our relationship quite well. So Jeremy is a colleague, a friend, but also a mentor. And I feel our conversations have often been this kind of two-way mentoring, where, I benefit from the seniority experience he has. And I might, be able to share a little bit about more recent developments when it comes to technology. We've been building a global community together that also runs online. And yeah, just sharing those perspectives, I think, is tremendously valuable. But I'm always in awe of the shift in awareness and, truly more inclusive behavior, healthier behavior. Yeah.
Thank you, Nadine. I think that summed up a lot of the points we've heard thus far, and as a reminder that we're all working from a different baseline of what leadership is and how we perceive ourselves and others. So we are going to come to Jeremy and then give everyone else a chance to respond and talk to this. But, full disclosure for our audience, this talk was partially inspired by a recent piece that Jeremy published on News Decoder, which was called "The Leader We Look Up to Could Be You." And so, Jeremy, I'd love to hear more just about your work with leadership development. And after hearing some of this, what you think are some of the more effective actions that young people can take to develop their skills.
Thanks very much, Maria. And it's a pleasure to be on here. This is kind of a 25-year dream to really focus on youth leadership because, like Nadine, I've been working with a lot of senior leaders. And even by the time people are in their 30s or 40s, a lot is baked in. A lot of these ideas, a lot of intransigence and unwillingness to look at things in a different way. And what I've always found working with youth, and I have a daughter who's 27, and if you read the article, I have a little boy who's 2. So looking at that, sort of through the eyes of my children, is to see, the tremendous potential that there is to, not in the sense of not making mistakes, and all of us have made mistakes and will make mistakes and will continue to make mistakes, but that idea of being willing to try different things. And, I heard you particularly, Maria Alejandra, about your voice not being heard. And I think that's a tough one because that's where a lot of people feel their voice is not heard. It not just youth like yourselves, but also women in many countries around the world, underrepresented groups. And so this is a way to be able to then be able to have that voice, identify your voice, refine your voice, and then make sure that it's heard. I mean, there's people I mentioned in the article, like Greta Thunberg, for example, Vanessa Nakate in the climate area, and, that everyone in their own way can do that. I'm not saying that immediately, Amma, it's great that you've already started up this group, and we'd love to support it in whatever way we can. You're going to do it in different ways. It could be through peer mentoring. It could be through many of the different things already described, through a basketball team. And focus I always have is around looking at yourself first. I think, Mahi, you mentioned mindfulness. That's a place to start, to be very mindful of who you are, what your strengths are, your weaknesses are, what your motivations are. At school, the fact that, all of you have taken the time, however many, there's 31 of you on this call, whatever time of the day or night it is, shows a certain level of commitment. And the word I've not heard as yet is passion. Passion for, in some way, making a difference in the world, whatever it might be. And that to me is the core. Before you start thinking about what you're going to do, why would you want to do anything? Why would you want to be a leader? And that's something which all of us will approach in our different way. And one thing I mentioned in the article is, a place to start is identify who are your heroes, heroines, the people you look up to. It may be, a fairly obvious one like Nelson Mandela. It could be, sports star like LeBron James, or it could be your grandmother or your great aunt, or somebody very well, and think about what they did in their community with their work, whatever it is. Also, just raising a family, leader, that's a form of leadership as well. So really, that place of introspection, self-reflection, then leading to be able to say, okay, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, this is how I can maybe contribute, this is how I can get started, taking small steps initially, and then being able to, as all of you are doing from testimony so far, doing things in your own way, contributing to your schools, to your community around the world. Keep on doing that. and each of you will find your niche in your own way, and there's no right or wrong way of doing this. And I just want to add, and this may sound a bit corny, I just finished watching Geek Girl on Netflix, which supposedly is about the fashion industry. To me, it wasn't about fashion industry. It was about neurodiversity. And here you had somebody that was on the spectrum and was able to not just function, but to be able to contribute, to be able to stand up for herself. And I don't want to give stuff away at the end if you've not watched it, but it was a very interesting lesson to me in terms of from wherever you're coming from and being, having the whole class say that she hates her, began to stand up for herself and say, I'm proud of who I am. And that to me is a form of leadership. It may not be a traditional definition, yet it's still something which is very powerful. And I think she's 16 in the show, that anyone at any age can stand up and say that. So I'll shut up for now. There's a lot more I'd like to say.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, I think that's a great point to raise. We often talk about the big capital L leadership skills, but sometimes these things that seem small are actually quite important. I just want to emphasize for our audience, if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. I saw some hands raised, but please do put your questions in the Q&A. And Carl, I think we have a couple of questions already that have come through for our guests.
We do, yeah. So we have a question from Elliot Temple, who asked, how much power do you think should be given to young leaders, and what type of power should they have?
And our students want to take that one on first?
I could throw in a few words. So I was thinking, and this may connect a little bit to should age be a consideration and when it comes to leadership, but I definitely think the younger the better in getting into the types of opportunities to learn how to be a leader are super important. As to how much power, I think it really just depends on the situation. Like, obviously, like when I was in middle school, I was much younger, but I was still part of student council, and just learning to contribute and be a voice in my community, I think is super important as a young leader. And everyone being able to have these experiences is important. And yeah, I think it can be on a smaller scale, but just like the introduction at when you're young to leadership opportunities is super important, and they'll grow as you get older.
Definitely. Anybody else want to chime in? Maria?
I would like to say something. Yeah, so I agree with Teddy. I think that it's really important to, to identify what type of age you're talking about. But what really matters, I think, like besides the age, is what the ideas, like the person, and like what ideas do they have. So it can be like, I don't know, a 17-year-old with huge ideas, and people still didn't don't take matter that. But I think that it should be taken into consideration like a bit, because you for a leader you want to search for someone that is capable and who has experience, and be like sometimes the time gives you experience. So I think that it's really important to give the young people's voice, but it's also important that like to involve them. Like if there's a leader, like a older leader leading something, it's also really important to to involve these young leaders, and to it's basically that. So it is really important to make a mix out of things.
I agree with what both panelists have said, because the way I think about it is it's sometimes hard to solve problems that are not that you weren't affected by. So if there are issues in it, like a town or a society, for instance, that affect the youth, like college students, for instance, having those college students and part of the town council coming up with solutions to those problems that affect them specifically will be a better way to solve the problem than having older people who think they know what the solution is.
The great point, Amma, goes back to it, Enoch, the example he used about removing social media, thinking that would solve a problem without actually being part of that community. And great.
I think,
I would. Okay,
sorry,
fine.
you
Yeah,
got it.
sure. Yeah, you would.
I have Mahi and then Ben go.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to say that being power in one hand is better distributing the power amongst people and having the opinions heard. So basically, what I struggle here is being heard or being my opinions kept. It's like a different part if you consider them, but then validate them. I would say that being heard or being like communication is the key for everything, for even removing solutions or even making problems. Communication is the key. So communication, one thing is something creates or destroys the problems, and I would say opinions. And you need to think deeper. For everything, you need to have every point of view, and you need to create or you need to select the best what you feel with removing like the pro con list or having a deeper thinking about that. So I would suggest like the teen things. I would say that instead of overthinking, I would say deep thinking works better. And if you want, you're like one of the introverts who are not able to speak up in the society or amongst your people, but you could just write and overthink about that instead of some basic things. So yeah.
I definitely agree with what all the panelists have said, and I think we have a great example at our school of how much power should be given to students. So we have a program that's called the Student Judiciary Program, which is where students have a say in the amount of discipline or consequences that go to people who have committed offenses or have done something wrong, which I think is very unique that the students have a say in what happens or what consequences are given to their fellow students, which I think is something that like a majority of people would think is mostly controlled by the teachers and stuff. And I definitely agree with Maria that there needs to be a balance between like power and ideas, and that there's a difference in like expressing your ideas and then having power to make like big decisions, I guess. But I think that's a good example in our school of aside from student government, of students having like power and the like the decision to or make decisions about what happens to their fellow students, which I think is a very good opportunity, and I think is getting towards more students having more power, or young people in general having more power.
Yeah, I agree. At my school, we have a similar system called the Honor Council. So we have an honor code, and when a student like violates or breaks that code, then it goes to like an honor council of students. And I think it's kind of like a fair system where the students then decide what the quote unquote punishment would be. And then it goes to the head of school to then decide whether we should go through with that punishment. And this is another example of how students have more power and a say in our community.
Yeah, I think it's great to have that those students be able to make decisions, but then also be surrounded by teachers who can sort of like decide how that gets played out. Like it's not just the students specifically who are just doling out punishments. It's more of they get to talk with their leaders and they have a real say in what goes on and making sure that the leaders of the school are listening to the students, which I think is great.
And if I may add, I think then you said something like to me when I saw the question, the second part caught my eye. What type of power? And you said having a real say. And I feel whenever we talk about power for young people, it should be genuine power, like real power, whatever that means. It might be within the framework of, this sort of tandem where you are involved and you have a person with more experience, like a teacher or, somebody being by your side, but having that on eye level. Because I've sometimes seen things where there's performative action and you're suggesting that young people have power, and people see right through that, and I think that can be so discouraging if you know that you're being used to pretend that there's power, but then there isn't really a way to influence and to have a real influence or to be heard and taken seriously. So I think that important, and to not underestimate sort of the maturity. I think so often as like people who are a little bit older, I hear, at least here in Germany, for example, hear like getting stuck on age, right? Oh, this person is only 16 or they're only like 18. But I think it comes back to experience as well. And I can see how, you know, a lot of young people have a rich amount of experience already in certain areas and have so much to share, and, you know, really can sort of step up to the opportunity. In psychology, I'm a psychologist by training. We have that concept of self-fulfilling prophecy. If I do believe that you all can step up and take that responsibility and have that power, I'm also making it easier for you to step into that role because you feel free to use that faith, right? If you feel that I'm doubting you as your teacher or instructor, and I'm already skeptical, then I put you in a position where you might get nervous, you might, you know, get self-doubt, and then also not be able to fill that role. But that's not because you can, that's because I didn't even give you the opportunity to do it. So I think that's really important, sort of, you know, put that trust and sort of real power for young people.
Yeah, I think that is really one of the struggles that, I mean, we face at our school is there is sort of this illusion of power, and like in some ways it may seem like we have more power than we do in student government. At least I think it's getting more accessible for students to actually have power on decisions, but I think it's very true that sometimes the teachers are really just listening to what you have to say and then not really acting on it, and sort of fostering this illusion that the students have more power than they do, which I think is something that definitely needs to be worked on.
If I could jump in a little bit, I always wonder what's real power. Is it having a position where you make decisions, or even if someone else is in that position, but your heart is power? So we may not necessarily have young people in those positions, but if the leader who is there understands these young people and puts them into consideration and hears their ideas, I think the youth then have power in it. Because if all we are seeking for is being in such positions, but really we cannot effect what necessitates the position, then we might fail. Because I once had a conversation with an old man, and he told me young people's passion is fleeting. It's like it's like they will come one day with an idea and they will pitch it to you and you love it. They have the energy, and then when you start investing in it, 3 months down the road, they don't have the energy anymore. They don't have the passion. They don't want to push the idea through. They are lazy. So you find that they don't have the experience. They are not enduring. They are not older, but they have good ideas. And so I feel like real power is not just being in such positions, but if we are to say how much power should we give the youths, we should give them all the power, as long as we are listening to the ideas, we are listening to what they want, we are listening to we are effecting what they envision, other than just giving them power. Because trust me, I've seen a couple youths being in power, and I also regret why they were there, yet I'm a youth myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Enoch. Just on that topic, there was a question from the audience about stepping into leadership roles. And for our students, would any of you seriously consider running for your city council within the next few years? Why would you do that, and why not? There was a comment with it as well that says it often feels like even the young people who are active in NGOs are not so keen to get involved with public institutions. So what would your thoughts be on that? Would you or wouldn't you consider running for your city council? Maybe if we direct that towards Maria Alejandra?
Well, I actually have considered that, but you know, it's a really huge process, and it has really like a very difficult details, and I have considered it, but it's really it's really hard because here the things are not so honest. And for like, so for me, it's really not that good to, to do something if the results are not gonna be honest. So I think I continue to be as a leader. I don't know if like a public institution, but something related to people and something related to movements and, to be someone's voice, really. So yeah, for me, it will be a no for now, but maybe in a few years, we don't know.
How about Mahi? We're going to ask all of our panelists this.
Yeah, sure. With this, like getting involved in politics in my country, I would say, like running my city, I would say is more of a getting politically involved thing. But then my motto or my vision or what I want in my society where I live is more about leadership, what I possess. So for me, like till now, I've not yet decided that I should run my city or be one of those political leaders, but my basic point of view is improve my society. For me, actions are better than words, speak louder than words, and I want to be in crowd. But then that qualities within me should step out of the crowd. I should stand out of the crowd. Being in like I should like for example, I should win for the best, not for the purpose of winning. So my goal, my motto should be clear and not my position, tells what I have to do. So yeah, I would say that.
Great, great. Thanks. How about you, Teddy?
Yeah, that's perfect. I totally agree with what Mahi and Maria said, but especially with what Mahi said about it's not like the winning that's important or being in that position of running your city. I think it's more about for me right now, especially as I'm still young. What's more important is, and I think there's more that can be said about the NGOs than being in a position of city council. I think the informational side and just it being an easier outlet for anyone really to be able to gain this information and have these types of discussions for people to know more about leadership and really anything that we talk about, especially through these news Decoder webinars. I think it's just important for young people to get to know like more information, and then eventually I think the people that are really interested in taking on like political leadership, those people will come out, but after all the work we've done, hopefully those people will have mutual information that we've learned through more public programs like this. So personally, I don't see in my future going to be a president or a senator or governor, whatever, working on city council. But I definitely feel like right now it's important for me to be a voice and help other people gain the information so that if they are interested, that they could step into a job like that.
Hey, how about Amma? What's your thought on running for office?
Yes. Sorry. So I'm currently a part of my city's youth council, and I don't think I'm still torn up between like running for office or doing any of that. But I think the mayor has done like a really good job in listening to what the youth have to say. And I think this council I'm a part of is the perfect way to do it. And my stance is instead of complaining about things our council or the town isn't doing, maybe being part of the planning and preparation to actually solving the issue, which I was like hinting at earlier. So I think the youth council I'm a part of is like a perfect way to do it. And yeah.
Ben.
Yeah, I think it really depends on where you live and what that environment is around the city. Like I know Alma said that that's something that her city's mayor thinks is very important, and I think that's a little or not really the case in where Teddy and I live. So I don't think there's really as many opportunities to be a part of like public decisions or office, which I think is something that would be a long process and it would take a lot of backing, which is why I'm sort of hesitant. And I agree with Teddy. I think it's important that since those initiatives aren't there or present now, I think it's important to sort of inform people and be a leader in any environment that I can, whether it, and since it's not public office, being a leader at the school or being a leader in our community. I think that's what's most important to me right now. But I think that's great that, Alma, that you're part of that and looking towards that, which I think is something that a lot of cities and places should adopt and focus more on.
Okay, thank you. Our hour has almost flown by. We only have about 5 more minutes here. So I do want to add one thing, that this talk was also inspired by a new program News Decoder is going to launch with Jeremy and Nadine, a global youth leadership program that will be for students in our academic network. So for those in the audience and for our school partners, please get in touch if you'd be interested in learning more and continuing these conversations. We're just sort of planting the seed here now, but we're creating a multi-week or multi-session module to build upon these leadership skills and these points that we've been talking about. So with just a few more minutes to go, I have kind of just a rapid fire question for everybody. And kind of going off of what Mahi said earlier about this idea of a good leader or an effective leader. I'm going to go around to all of you and ask, just in one word, what do you think makes a great leader or perhaps an effective leader? So we'll start with Teddy.
I think an effective leader is definitely the right word. But an effective leader is someone who can be a representative of their passions and also the passions of the group or thing that they're leading. And I think Jeremy talked about passion, and I think that's super important, just to be passionate about what you're leading.
Okay. So that was more than one word, but I'll give it to you because I like where you went with that. So representing your people and passion. Maria, what's one word you think?
I think that it makes a good leader to listen to the people, So, but sometimes we just ignore what the people are saying because we prefer our opinion. But for a leader, it's really important to listen to the people and to understand them. I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Alma.
I think an effective leader is a humble leader, someone that's willing to, even though you have so much power, still being able to listen to other people that don't have that power and maybe give them that power through different ways.
Great, great. Ben, what's your word?
I would say confident. I think an effective leader is somebody who is confident in their ability to make change and that they really believe that they can make a difference, because if you don't believe that you can make a difference, then you never will. So I think being confident, as well as the list of other words that have been said, are very good for describing what an effective leader is.
Mahi?
I would like to say that successful or a good leader may be like influencing, an effective leader may be inspiring to others. So yeah, I would wrap up with those two.
Great. Enoch, I wonder if you had to choose a word, what describes a good leader, an effective leader?
Am I clear?
Yes, we got you.
Okay, cool. I think a good leader would be like a bamboo in the Chinese philosophy of the four gentlemen, and the reason is the bamboo is bends with the wind, but it doesn't break. It means you're firm, you're confident, but then you adapt to the situation without breaking. So you stay focused, and when the wind goes, you come back and you tell people this is the right way.
Excellent. I love that visual. Nadine, what's your word?
My word is compassionate towards themselves and others.
Cahal, how about you?
I was team listener, but I'm going to go with empathetic. I think you need to have empathy, and it's following on from what Nadine said.
Great. And Jeremy, we'll come to you to wrap it up.
Well, yes to all of the above, but the one I would add would be integrity, that you have a strong set of values where it comes from your religious, spiritual beliefs, from your family, community, but that's the base, the foundation on which everything else is based, to me.
Excellent. Well, on that note, we've reached the top of the hour. This time flew by, so I'd like to thank all of our panelists, Ben, Maria, Mahi, Ama, Teddy, Enoch, Nadine, Jeremy, and Kahal. Thank you for producing, and thank you all for your insightful, thoughtful comments today. I've certainly got lots to think on, and hopefully this is just the beginning. And indeed, it is just the beginning of our Decoder Dialogue series. So thank you all to our audience for joining in, and I hope you are able to join us for the next one. Quickly, we do have another poll, Kahal, if you want to throw that up for our audience that's still here. We do want this to be an interactive space, and that includes the topics as well that we discuss, and they're often generated from our audience. So if you have any thoughts on what you would like to see in a future Decoder Dialogue, please throw in your suggestion in the poll. While you're doing that, I'll invite you all to save the date for our next Decoder Dialogue next month on Tuesday, October 29th, which will be on the topic of artificial intelligence in the newsroom and the classroom, something that is impacting us all. I don't know if we have any thoughts yet, but we'll also send out a follow-up survey if anyone has thoughts. And again, the recording of this webinar will go up on news-decoder.com in the coming days. And be sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates. So thank you all once more again. And from all of us at News Decoder, we wish you a pleasant rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.